What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Whenever there's a new hero, there's always a ton of speculation. For most of them, I've been pretty accurate, and for Hero 26, I was almost completely dead on with what the hero was going to be. Can I do it again for 27? Let's find out. Now, for those of you guys who have been around for a little while, you might remember that I almost perfectly predicted what Hero 26 was going to be. I didn't know the name of the character or what it was going to look like, but I pretty much nailed what kind of character it was going to be and what kind of abilities it was going to have. Now, if you don't believe me, here's a quick clip back from September 15 making my Hero 26 prediction. So one of the things that has been requested quite a bit is having a bad guy as a healer. Basically someone who is not affiliated with Overwatch, but instead they're a member of Talon. So that opens up a lot of cool little possibilities, kind of similar to how like Reaper has his lifesteal. The new Talon healer could do something similar to that. Maybe you have to do damage to an enemy and you kind of like take their health and you kind of store it, and then you can give it to one of your teammates or something like that. So that was pretty spot on. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that again for Hero 27, but I'm going to give it a try. So yesterday, I made a video going over all of the potential candidates for Hero 27. Specifically, what characters might make it as the next hero. So if you haven't seen that video, go and check it out after you're done watching this. But in this video, I want to talk about what I think Blizzard is going to add for the class and what potential abilities the hero is going to have. Because really, for me anyways, what the hero looks like and what it's called, I don't really care all that much. I'm more interested in what it can do. So the first thing we have to look at is how does Blizzard determine what they're going to add to the game? And they've actually told us on a couple of different occasions that mostly when they add something to the game, it kind of fills a need for what the game is currently lacking. So one of the first characters was Ana, and that's because we just didn't have that much healing in the game. At the time, we only had Lucio, Mercy, and Zenyatta. And, you know, we had Sim, but obviously she doesn't heal. So we only had the 3 healers in the game, and they really needed to add more, so they gave us Ana. And then later on, we ended up getting Sombra, which was an attempt to kind of break up the game a little bit, to try to add a little bit of utility to it, but it, for the most part, failed, and it really didn't really do what they expected it to do. The next character they added was Orisa, and that was because they really needed to have another kind of anchor tank in the game, because the only thing that we had was Reinhardt. And if you look at the others, they just don't do the same thing as Reinhardt, so they wanted something similar, but not exactly a copy. And then the next character we got was Doomfist. This wasn't added to the game for any specific need, other than the fact that fans just wanted the character. Like, there was so much hype and so much desire for the character to be in the game that they said, okay, fine, and they added it. So this is a little bit of an exception to the rule. And then the most recent character that we've gotten is Moira, and this again was to fill the need, the fact that the healing just wasn't there in the game. Like, we just needed more healers. So if we're looking at all of this right now, like, what are we still lacking? Well, we ended up getting 2 new DPS characters, 2 new supports, and 1 tank character. But the thing is, even though we haven't gotten any defensive characters, offense and defense are kind of the same. They're really all DPS characters. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 DPS characters. You could take some of these, like Bastion or Hanzo or Junkrat or Widow, and just throw them into the offense category, and for the most part, it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. I mean, maybe with Mei and Torbjorn, there's a little bit of, you know, difference there, but for the most part, defense is basically just offense. So right now, if we look at it, we have a ton of DPS character options. We have a little bit, we only have 6 tank options, and some of them aren't even really tanks. And then we have only 6 healer or support options, and one of them isn't actually even a healer. So we still have a ton of DPS, and we're still lacking a lot in the tank and the healing role. Now, I don't think we're going to get another healer, so we can pretty much just cross that out right now, because we just got Moira. I don't see them adding another one already. So that means that, what does Blizzard look at it? Do they consider all of this to be DPS? Or do they consider defense to be something completely different? Because if they consider defense to be completely different, then what's going to happen? Then we're probably going to get a defense character. That would be my guess. But if they treat it all as DPS, then my guess would probably be we're going to get another tank. And that really kind of seems to be what the game is lacking right now, because when you look at the tournament picks and the high-end picks, what do you see? You see lots of Genji, lots of Tracer, lots of D.Va, lots of Winston, right? All these high mobility characters, and they just completely, right now, they're just completely dominating the game. And all of the other slower stuff just really cannot compete with it. So is dive really that big of an issue? Does Blizzard need to add anti-dive characters? Yes, they absolutely do. I know there are some people that think that the dive meta is dead and gone, but it really never went away. It's still around. So let me show you a couple examples here. So this is a screenshot of a recent Overwatch tournament. So these are the top characters that were used. You have D.Va, Mercy, Zenyatta, Tracer, and Winston. They are dominating the pick rate. And then below that you have Genji, Soldier 76, and McCree. So what you're looking at is essentially a dive meta. Now, the last character, the second DPS, other than Tracer, get swapped in and out. So you might have a Genji, you might have a Soldier, or you might have a McCree. But for the most part, everything else is essentially a dive meta. Now, let's take a look at the leaderboards for the Season 7 Top 500. Now, what I'm going to do is, first of all, we're only going to look at the leftmost character, and the reason for that is because look at this as an example. So we have Yuno here, he has Mercy, Symmetra, and Moira. So this is why we only look at the first one, because the first one is 19 hours, the second one is 10 minutes, and the third one is only 5 minutes. So we're only going to look at the first character for all of these. And let's look at how much of it is dive. So Zenyatta is a dive character. You also have Tracer, you have D.Va, you have Tracer again, Zenyatta, Tracer, D.Va again. There's a couple of McCrees on there. But then look down here. So again, Tracer, Mercy also in that very high pick rate, but that's because of the res. You got D.Va, Zen, Genji, D.Va, Winston. We got a McCree, Tracer, Winston. Then you have Tracer, Zen, you know, Genji, Zen, Tracer, 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 D.Va, Tracer, Tracer. I mean, are you guys seeing a pattern here, right? I hope you are. D.Va, Genji, D.Va, Tracer, Tracer, Genji. Oh, we have a Reaper. And then we have Genji, Winston, and D.Va. I mean, it goes on and on and on, page after page after page. It's very clear that dive, high mobility characters are absolutely dominating this game right now. So what does Blizzard need to add? What does the game need? It needs anti-dive. So the class for Hero 27 is probably going to be a tank. It might be defense. Again, that depends on how Blizzard actually views that category, whether they just treat it as a different kind of DPS or not. But I think tank would probably be the best, and that character needs to have some sort of abilities that can really hinder those dive characters, the high mobility characters like the Tracer, the Genji, and that sort of stuff. Now, one of the main reasons why dive is so effective is because none of the tanks in the game are really all that effective at defending against dive characters. In fact, the only tanks that are really good against defending against dive are also part of the dive, which is going to be Winston and D.Va. So rather than countering the problem, they simply add to the problem. Now, you have Zarya, who can throw a bubble, but again, that only lasts for 2 seconds. You have Roadhog. If he's good, he can land that hook and maybe get one of them and try to take a little bit of pressure off. Reinhardt and Orisa are almost completely useless at dealing with dive that is pressuring your supports. So the game needs a tank that can do something to take that pressure off of your supports and to cripple that dive meta. So there are a couple of really awesome ways that Blizzard could handle this. The first one is through damage resistance. So kind of similar to Bastion's Ironclad. So rather than giving your teammates armor or extra health, you just give them damage resistance. Now there are two different versions of this. You could have like a passive one that's kind of like an aura that just gives everybody that's in your area like an extra 5% damage resistance or something like that. Or you could have it on a cooldown and make it an actual ability and make it a little stronger, where, like, let's say every 10 seconds you can use some sort of shout, and it gives everybody within 5 meters an extra 10% damage resistance, and it lasts for somewhere between 3 to 5 seconds or something like that. Another way would be a more direct or focused way, kind of similar to how Zenyatta uses his Harmony and his Discord. So what you could do as the tank is you could pick one of your teammates and you could give them that damage resistance. So they get an extra, like, let's say 10 or 15 damage resistance on that one character. And as long as you maintain line of sight, then they keep it. Or maybe it would be on a duration or something like that. Maybe it lasts like 5 to 10 seconds or whatever it happens to be. So that's the first option. The second one is kind of more like a lifelink. I've talked about this in the past. It was a suggestion for Roadhog back when they were originally talking about how they were going to change him and redesign him a little bit. Now, at the time, we didn't know what they were going to do, but I made the suggestion that you give Roadhog this kind of bodyguard ability or a bodyguard passive. But the general idea is that when your teammate takes damage, instead of him taking all of the damage, some of that would be distributed to the tank instead. So there's a bunch of different ways that Blizzard could handle it and a lot of different percentages and that sort of stuff. And you have to take armor into the equation and possibly damage resistance, kind of similar to Ironclad from Bastion. So like there's a lot of different things that they could potentially use with the tank. But again, the general idea is if your teammate gets hit for 100, then rather than taking that full 100, they would only take, let's say, half of it. And then you as the tank take the other half. Or maybe they take 70% and you take 30, or maybe they take 30 and you take 70. I mean, again, this sort of thing would have to be tested and fully fleshed out. But the idea is that things like barriers, like Orissa's barrier and Reinhardt barrier, do not protect your supports from any sort of dive. And things like the Zarya bubble, the Roadhog hook, they're just simply not good enough to deal with that. And then you have Winston and D.Va, who are part of the dive, who are just adding to the problem rather than countering it. So if you were to add a tank that could kind of stay back with the supports and indirectly absorb their damage, then that would cripple what the dive characters are actually able to do. They wouldn't be able to just come in and burst down your healers within a second or two. Instead, they would have to deal a little bit more sustained damage in order to take them out. And in that time, your team might actually be able to respond and deal with them before all of that damage is done. So this sort of mechanic would allow for slower teams, ones with a lot less mobility, to start popping up and being a lot more effective. And therefore, dive wouldn't be as dominating as it is right now. So here is my full prediction. I think that the next character is likely going to be a tank, maybe slight chance defense, but more likely a tank. And it's going to have some sort of new damage mitigation, a new defensive tool that we don't currently have in the game right now. Now, also, I'll throw this one out there. I think it might be a member of Talon, because I think Blizzard is trying to actually build up the bad guys in Overwatch. Like, they have the Overwatch team, and then they have Talon, and they're trying to create conflict between the two. So I'll go out on a limb and say that the new character will also be a member of Talon. But that's what we're going to have. Tank, new damage mitigation, and maybe a member of Talon. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to check out my Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. The links are down below. Thanks for watching. Remember, always, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault. Also, special thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this all possible. If you'd like to see what kind of cool rewards you can get for supporting the channel, check the links on screen and down below.